12 bone-chilling haunted forest tales that shocked America, you won't believe. 7. The air hung thick with the stench of fear, as if the forest itself exhaled a breath of terror each time the sun dipped below the horizon. Legends whispered through the crooked branches of eldritch woods, where shadows danced like lost souls, swaying to the haunting melody of the wind. This place had seen horrors that would make the bravest shiver. It wasn't just the snapping of twigs that sent chills down spines. It was the stories that seeped from its depths, tales so spine-tingling they echoed across the nation, echoing the primal terror that festered within. On a chilly autumn night, a group of friends gathered around a crackling campfire at the forest's edge, each one daring the other to delve deeper into the inscrutable dark. They spoke of the haunting shrieks that could be heard at midnight, calls for help echoing against the bark of ancient trees. No one had ever found the source, and yet they were sure they heard something, an otherworldly cry that clawed at their sanity. The friends huddled closer, their hearts racing as they recalled how some had ventured in and never returned. The stories spoke of eerie figures moving just beyond the edge of darkness, with hollow eyes that seemed to pierce the soul. The compelling sensation of being watched prickled down their necks. Every rustle of leaves felt like a warning. What were they waiting for? Was it the thrill of the unexplained? Or was it the cold grip of dread? As the night deepened, shadows lengthened, weaving intricate stories of dark pasts. It grew harder to tell what was real and what was imagination. Everyone could feel something just beyond their sight, a presence heavy enough to make breathing difficult, hearts pounding like war drums. With each heartbeat, the forest seemed to thrum with secrets, each pulse adding weight to the air around them. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The fire flickered, casting ghostly shapes that danced and morphed, teasing their sense of reality. Suddenly, the wind shifted, carrying an eerie silence that pressed against their ears, thick and palpable. It was as if the woods were collectively holding its breath. And then, a rustling emerged, louder now, more deliberate. Everyone froze, exchanging wide-eyed glances, and an unspoken agreement settled among them. They had to know what lurked behind those trees. Slowly, they turned. The chilling realization dawned. Something was watching them, and in that moment, fear transformed into an insatiable curiosity. They moved toward the darkness, pulses racing, breaths quickening. As they stepped into the woods, a low growl reverberated from the shadows, echoing along the twisted bark. What waited for them, just out of sight? Would they find what they were looking for, or would they join the ranks of those who had ventured too far into eldritch woods? The deeper they plunged into the forest, the thicker the air became. It pressed in on them, heavy and cold, wrapping around their bodies like a shroud. The once vibrant sounds of their campfire had faded away, leaving only the unsettling whisper of the wind threading through the trees, as if warning them to turn back. But none of them dared to speak the thought that loomed in their minds. The thrill of the unknown was now overshadowed by an inexplicable dread. As they walked, their flashlights flickered uncertainly, casting erratic beams of light that could barely penetrate the then thick darkness. Shadows elongated into monstrous shapes, darting just out of sight, scheming to leap out at any moment. A deep unease settled in Lawrence's gut. He glanced over his shoulder, convinced he noticed a movement behind the thinning tree line. "Did you see that?" He barely managed to whisper, his voice trembling. "Shut up," snapped Evelyn, her hand gripping the beam of her flashlight tight enough to drain the color from her knuckles. "It's just your imagination." But her eyes betrayed her certainty, the flicker of fear flashing across them. They pressed on, stepping deeper into the heart of eldritch woods. The ground felt moist and spongy beneath their boots, sucking them in with each hesitant step. The growl they heard earlier resonated again, low and rumbling, but this time accompanied by the unmistakable sound of something heavy moving through the underbrush. Goosebumps erupted on their arms. It felt closer now, breathing. Watching. Guys, we should go back. Clara whispered, her voice barely audible. This isn't fun anymore. As if summoned by her words, the howling wind died down completely, plunging them into a suffocating silence. Even the rustling leaves seemed to hold their breath. Then came a piercing scream, high-pitched and desperate. All 5 friends froze, paralyzed by terror. It cut through the silence like a razor, sending shockwaves of horror coursing through them all. What was that? Eli stammered, his eyes wide and searching the darkness. Probably just someone else camping, Clara said, though nobody believed her. The idea felt hollow and flimsy, more a response to their blossoming fear than in truth. But then another scream echoed, followed by the unmistakable sound of branches snapping. It was closer this time, crouching behind a clump of bushes that loomed like watchful gargoyles, waiting for the right moment to pounce. The group huddled together, eyes darting around, each one wondering if they should run or hold their ground. And then, without warning, a figure emerged from the underbrush, a silhouette, distorted by shadows, eyes glinting in the beam of their flashlights. It was tall and unearthly, limbs twisted at odd angles, its mouth stretched in a rictus grin that chilled the very marrow in their bones. Panic seized them like a vice. "Run!" Lawrence screamed, the command igniting the wild charge of adrenaline racing through them. They turned as one, sprinting down the narrow, leaf-strewn path, heartbeats a drumroll of fear behind them as they tore through the woods, crashing past branches and ripping through the brush. The laughter echoed around them, sharp, mocking, and echoing without end. What had they unleashed? Would they manage to escape this nightmare? With every frantic step, they could feel the presence behind them, a dark tendril that pulled on their shadows as they fled into the unknown. Just ahead, the trees thickened, the path ahead narrowing to a choking chokehold of bark and thorns. And then they stumbled. One of them was going to fall. The question was who and what would happen then. They stumbled in a chaotic flurry of limbs and terrified breaths. Clara lost her footing first, her ankle twisting painfully as she cried out. Lawrence was closest, instinctively reaching for her arm, but all at once, the forest had transformed. The shadows moved with a life of their own, bending around them like tendrils eager to ensnare. "Get up, Clara. We need to go," Lawrence shouted, eyes wide and frantic. But Clara was frozen, her panic rooting her to the ground. As the laughter surrounded them, she looked back, her eyes wide with terror, unable to comprehend the horror stalking them. "I can't." Before Lawrence could pull her up, a splintering crack echoed through the air like a gunshot. A massive branch snapped above, crashing down and narrowly missing Clara by inches. The sparkle of danger was palpable. They had to move. The others didn't hesitate, their instincts kicking in as they pressed forward, leaving Clara to wrestle with her fear. "Clara, come on," Evelyn yelled, desperation creeping into her voice as she ran back to help her friend. Clara's eyes darted around, and then her face blanched. "There's something behind us," she screeched, scrambling to her feet just as the figure emerged from the dark, hunger playing in its chaotic grin. "No, no," Clara sobbed, yanking her from the ground as they fled together. But fear was a relentless beast nipping at their heels, urging them onward. They tore deeper into the woods, their bodies thrumming with adrenaline. Thorns whipped at their cheeks, leaving scratches, but they didn't dare stop to assess the damage. The howls faded, replaced by a heavy, guttural growl, echoing like a predator savoring its next meal. "Which way?" Eli shouted, the beam from his flashlight wavering as they emerged into a small clearing, the trees parting like a curtain. Shadows danced mockingly along the periphery, and their hope wavered. "Anywhere but here," Evelyn replied, heart pounding. They veered right, but the darkness closed in around them like a vice. The trees loomed more threatening than ever, encroaching upon them as if protecting something. A flash of movement in the corner of Lawrence's eye almost made him stumble again. There it was again, the figure, drawing closer, its head tilting in a bizarre, unnatural way. "Tighter," Lawrence shouted, grabbing Clara and Eli by the shoulders, pulling them together as he tried to steady the candle of hope flickering in his chest. They huddled close, their breaths coming in ragged spurts, scent of damp earth mixing with the cold fear lacing their throats. "Look," Clara's voice cracked through her gasps. She pointed at a cabin half hidden by wild bushes and unruly undergrowth on the outskirts of the clearing. A frail ray of hope glinted among the terror. Maybe we can hide inside. Is that even safe? Eli asked, his face pale but determined. It's better than out here. Evelyn snapped, grasping for confidence. They sprinted toward the cabin, urgency fueling their every step. The wooden door sagged ominously on creaking hinges, and as they burst in, an overwhelming stench of mildew assaulted them. The floor was littered with debris and shattered furniture. They pressed together, hearts hammering in their chests as they listened to the faint sounds of the forest. Then came the laughter, a deep, rumbling sound that spiraled around them as darkness thickened. They huddled beneath a window, peering out into the forest, breaths held tight in their throats. There was a moment of deafening silence, thick enough to fracture. Just then, an agonizing cry echoed from somewhere deeper within the woods. The sound clawed at their sanity, recalling their own fears. Who else was out here? And then came a whisper, low and chilling, resonating through the house, winding around their minds. Why do you run? The question hung in the air, heavy as night itself. Their eyes darted around, connecting with fear and despair. Who had it come from? Something stirred just beyond their view. The shadows crept closer. Would their sanctuary protect them, or had they unwittingly stepped into the den of their greatest nightmare? In that moment, another scream pierced the silence. It was undeniably human. Someone else is here, Clara said, voice trembling as the true horror began to unfold. As they exchanged horrified glances, the scratching began a rhythmic rapping against the cabin door, persistent and insistent. What waited on the other side? They were not alone in this cursed place, and the night promised to reveal its dark secrets. The scratching at the door intensified, a nightmarish lullaby that matched the frantic beats of their hearts. Each thud sent tremors through their bones, the sound echoing in the dark corners of the cabin. What do we do? Eli whispered, terror etching deep lines into his youthful face. I can't. Clara choked out, her hands clenched into fists, nails digging painfully into her palms. Stay quiet, Lawrence urged, the command coming out sharper than he intended. Just listen. The laughter faded into a whisper, as if retreating into the depths of the forest. A moment of silence lingered, tense and heavy, broken only by the occasional crack of wood settling beneath their weight. But relief was fleeting. With a suddenness that startled them, the scratching stopped. A breathless moment hung in the air, their ears straining against the silence. Then they heard a low rumble of footsteps, heavy and deliberate, circling the cabin like a predator toying with its prey. What if they know we're in here? Evelyn's voice quivered, her eyes wide with panic. She pressed against the window, trying to peer out through a grimy crack, trembling as if the darkness might reach out and pull her in. Don't look. Lawrence pulled her back, just as a silhouette loomed past the window. The grotesque shape was vague but suffused with an unsettling familiarity, its features contorted in a way that made bile rise in his throat. Just stay still. A shift in the air sent shivers down their spines. The door rattled violently, the wood creaking in protest as something outside tested its limits. Is it trying to get in? Clara's voice was barely above a whisper, fear lacing every syllable. What choice do we have? We have to barricade the door. Lawrence grabbed a broken chair nearby, glancing at the window. Shadows appeared to stretch and tear, reaching for the light with claw-like fingers. How had they managed to find such a dreadful place? Evelyn and Eli scrambled to help him, pushing aside the rubble on the floor as they set the chair against the door. It creaked and moaned, but they pressed on until it was sturdy enough to hold hopefully. A sudden violent bang reverberated against the door, the chair shuddering under the assault. Get back! Lawrence shouted, adrenaline surging through him as he grabbed the nearest object, a rusted metal rod, his fingers trembling around the cold grip. If it breaks through, Evelyn's voice trailed off, overwhelmed by the weight of those words. The creature outside let out a spine-chilling shriek, an unholy blend of laughter and rage that made Clara cover her ears. The door rattled again, the hinges straining under the pressure. Why do you run? The whisper returned, wrapping around them with a taunting familiarity, echoing what had already been said. Lawrence's heart raced, memories flashing through his mind. But he couldn't grasp why those words felt so incredibly personal. Suddenly, there was a crack. The wood splintered, a jagged hole forming near the doorknob. Clara screamed, a high-pitched sound that filled the air with terror. "Hold it!" Lawrence shouted, pressed against the door with all his weight, his body shaking with effort. "It's breaking through." The door shuddered under the weight. Something sharp caught the light, a claw, glistening in the moonlight, piercing through the new opening. "What do we do?" Eli shouted over Clara's panicked sobs. "We need to run," Lawrence yelled back. But before he could finish, the door burst open in a shower of splinters and shadows. They stumbled, trying to escape, but the darkness surged in like a flood, swallowing up everything they thought they knew. The creature loomed there, its grotesque face flashing with malevolent glee. "Join me," it hissed. The hope drained from their hearts as they realized they hadn't just stumbled into a cabin. They had entered a nightmare beyond anything they could ever imagined. As they spun to flee, the forest closed in, a labyrinth of terror shrouded in night. Where would they go now? But deep down, a single, chilling truth settled in Clara's heart. They weren't just running from something. They were running toward an even greater horror waiting to be revealed. What is out there? Lawrence wondered as they burst into the next patch of darkness, the urgency amplifying with every frantic heartbeat. What truth waited in the depths of the forest that now claimed them as its own? The darkness wrapped around them like a smothering blanket, heavy and suffocating. As they stumbled forward, hearts racing, the sounds of the night mingled with their own ragged breaths. Branches scratched at their skin and sharp twigs snagged at their clothes, a painful reminder that the forest was alive and hostile. "Where do we go?" Evelyn panted, her voice thick with fear. She glanced back, as if searching for the creature amidst the swirling shadows that seemed to breathe around them. "Just keep moving," Lawrence urged, pushing the others forward. He felt the pressure building in his chest, the weight of their situation crashing down on him. Each step felt like it could be their last, but they had no choice. Ahead, a faint glimmer of light pierced the thick darkness. Hope flickered within Clara. Maybe it was their salvation. She grabbed Eli's hand, her grip desperate and tight. "Do you see that?" "Yes." Eli's face lit up, chased by shadows. "Let us go." They sprinted toward it, hope fueling their flight. But as they neared the source, an unsettling realization crept in. The glow seemed unnatural, pulsating, almost like a heartbeat. The air grew still, the forest surrounding them quieting as if holding its breath. Evelyn hesitated. What if it's a trap? Before they could respond, an ear-splitting roar erupted from behind, shaking the very ground beneath their feet. The creature had broken free from the shadows, its twisted form silhouetted by the moonlight. The eyes glowed a sickly yellow, locking onto them with a diseased hunger. "Run!" Lawrence shouted, adrenaline surging as they broke through the last line of trees and found themselves in a clearing. "What is that?" Eli gasped, eyes wide in horror. The light they had seen was emanating from a stone altar at the center of the clearing, marked with cryptic symbols and surrounded by eerie, flickering torches that illuminated the dread creeping into their hearts. Atop the altar lay bones, human remains jumbled together as if offering themselves to whatever dark force resided here. Lawrence's legs felt unsteady, but he anchored himself. "We can't let it catch us. We have to find a way to escape." "But where?" Clara cried, fear making her voice tremble. "That thing out there, Shu," Evelyn hissed, her eyes darting around. "We need to hide now." In a panic, they crouched behind the altar, hearts pounding so loudly they could nearly taste the fear thick in the air. The creature stepped into the clearing, its form massive and twisted. It prowled, its claws scraping against the earth, searching. Lawrence's grip on the metal rod tightened. The thing was here. They were trapped. "Help me try to figure out those symbols," he whispered urgently to Clara while peeking over the altar. More grimy blood and remnants stained the ground, sending chills racing down his spine. The symbols looked ancient, foreboding a language he thought he had seen before. "What if we can use them?" Clara breathed, flicking her gaze between the symbols and the beast. Suddenly, the creature turned its gaze toward them, nostrils flaring as if it had caught their scent. The hunt was on, primal instincts ignited within it, palpable and raw. "We have to distract it," Lawrence shouted, bolting from concealment in a desperate chase for survival. Evelyn and Eli followed, but their eyes remained fixed on the altar, as if its secrets might save them. What if? What if it needs a sacrifice? Clara gasped as a terrible thought struck her. Don't say that. Eli's eyes widened in horror. But deep inside, a truth began to fester. In a world twisted by darkness, what would they be willing to sacrifice to survive? As the creature lunged, their identities lost in the chaos, the forest whispered its secrets. What had they awakened in its secrets? In that fleeting moment, realization hit Clara hard. Something was guiding them, perhaps leading them all the way to the altar. What truly lay ahead would decide their fates, but they had to choose. Would they stand as a united front, or would fear lead them to betrayal? The choice hovered dangerously in the air. As they pressed deeper into the forest's grip, where every shadow could hold a truth more terrifying than the last, Lawrence sprinted ahead, his legs feeling like lead yet pushing harder against the pain. The forest closed in around them, branches scratching at him, slowing him down. He could hear the beast's heavy breathing behind him, hot and furious, each breath like a war drum beating the rhythm of death. Keep moving, he yelled back as he glanced over his shoulder, the creature's hulking frame looming ever closer. Its eyes glinted with malevolent hunger, sending a wave of icy dread coursing through him. Evelyn stumbled but steadied herself, gripping Eli's arm. Lawrence, we can't keep this up. We need to find somewhere safe. Her voice cracked, barely rising above the chaos around them. Over there, Clara shouted, spotting a hollow tree at the edge of the clearing. Its gnarled roots seemed to invite them, and she darted toward it, pulling Eli and Evelyn to follow. They squeezed into the hollow, panting heavily, bodies pressed together in a tight embrace that fought against the chill closing in on them. The thick bark enveloped them, a pitiful shield against the horrors of the night. Do you think it saw us? Clara whispered, her breath trembling. No, Lawrence replied, though his voice wavered. His heart raced as he strained to listen, the rustling branches whispering secrets he dreaded to know. Moments stretched into eternity. The creature prowled outside, its growls guttural and low, vibrating the air. Every heartbeat echoed loudly in the hollow, each thud like a ticking clock counting down the seconds until they would be found. Through the darkness, something glinted, a reflection from the altar's symbols in the moonlight. Clara's eyes widened. What if there's a way out? What if we can use those symbols to protect ourselves? How? Eli gasped, fear making his voice sharp. They look like ancient runes or something. They could be dangerous. A heavy pause hung in the air, and Evelyn's eyes darted toward the entrance of the hollow. The sounds of the beast had quieted. A new fear crept over her. What if we don't have a choice? The reality of their predicament crashed down upon them. Each idea presented itself like a blade held to their throats. Stand and fight, or stay silent and hide. Listen, Lawrence whispered urgently, suddenly standing. The ground shook slightly as the creature's heavy footfalls moved away from them. It had sensed something or someone, but what? What are you doing? Evelyn hissed, gripping his arm. I have to see, he replied, pushing past the morbid gravitational pull of fear. He glanced outside, breath hitching as he spotted the beast creeping toward the altar, sniffing the air. Tiny droplets of moonlight glistened off its grotesque form. Shivers raced down his spine. Suddenly, something caught his eye, a movement behind the altar. A figure? A ghostly shadow flitted in and out of the torchlight, weaving through the flickering flames like a whisper. Lawrence squinted, his heart pounding louder than the creature's growls. Guys, I think there's someone else, someone trapped here. What? Lawrence. Clara's voice trembled, betraying a sliver of hope amidst despair. Before he could react, the creature turned abruptly. Its yellow eyes locked onto him, a predator ready to pounce. Lawrence's blood turned to ice. Get back, he shouted, his voice fleeing as he darted back into the hollow. Then came the darkness again, wrapping around them, tight and thundering. Outside, the creature snarled, furious. In that moment of chaos, a chilling realization crashed over them, like a wave. Had they stumbled upon something much larger than themselves? Were we led here on purpose? Clara's voice shook, a question heavy with implications. The ground trembled beneath them, the altar throbbing with a sinister pulse as the creature drew closer, as if the very forest held its breath for what would come next. Something was awakening, deep within the shadows, and whatever it was, it craved something more than just survival. What choice remained as they faced the abyss of darkness that beckoned? Would they confront the horror outside, or plunge further into the unknown that awaited? Breathless, Lawrence pressed against the rough bark, heart hammering in his chest like a drum in the dead of night. The shadows seemed to stretch and pulse around them. Clara's face was pale, lips pressed into a thin line of fear, while Evelyn's eyes darted anxiously toward the hollow entrance, her breath coming in shallow gasps. "What do we do?" Eli whispered, voice barely audible against the growls outside. The creature's snarls ebbed and swelled, a haunting song that promised horrific outcomes. Lawrence's mind raced. "We need to figure out what that figure was. Could it be someone who knows how to stop this?" His voice trembled, undermined by doubt. The vision of the shadow flickered through his mind, a twisted hope wrapped in cold desperation. "The only way to know is to get out of here," Clara responded, voice hushed, but resolute. "If that thing is after us, we want to be safe forever." "No, we can't open that entrance," Evelyn cried, gripping Lawrence's wrist. If the beast is still out there, her terror hung thick in the air, a reminder of their vulnerable state. "We'll be trapped in here forever," Eli argued, fear giving him a slight edge of courage. "It's either find out what is happening or wait for it to come back." The hollow whispered promises of safety, but the heavy breath of the creature outside warned of the danger within. Each heartbeat felt like a countdown, pressing down on them with unbearable weight. "I'll go," Lawrence declared, surprising himself. "I'll slip out and take a quick look. If it's safe, I'll signal. If not—" He hesitated, the reality biting at his resolve. "Just stay quiet." "Are you insane?" Clara gasped. "You can't just walk out there." "I have to." He drew in a slow breath, grounding himself. "If we're going to survive, we need to know what we're up against." As Lawrence edged closer to the opening, Evelyn squeezed his hand. "Please be careful." Her eyes were wide, filled with both fear and something deeper, love, perhaps. It was a reminder of what was at stake. He nodded sharply, heart racing. He paused at the threshold, listening intently. The growls mixed with a heavy rustle, and adrenaline surged through him. "Here goes nothing," Lawrence murmured, peering out. The scene unfolded a breath away from pure terror. The beast loomed near the altar, sniffing at the air, but beyond it, the shadow swirled again, more than just a figment of his imagination. A humanoid shape emerged. It was draped in rags, stained and torn, moving unpredictably under the moonlight. Nothing short of a madman would risk this, Lawrence thought, yet he couldn't turn away. That figure was struggling, caught between the altar and the heartbeat of the beast. Desperation clawed at him. "Someone needs help." He spoke out loud, voice barely above a whisper, but it was enough. The creature turned, sniffing the air with unnerving precision, eyes fixating on him. "Lawrence!" Clara's urgent gasp pulled him back to reality. He snapped toward her, seeing the horror etched on her face. "Get back inside," he shouted, panic flooding his words. Without thinking, he moved back into the hollow. The weight of their decisions crashed down on him, cold and unforgiving. "What did you see?" Evelyn demanded, breathless. The truth lingered on his lips. It's not just a beast out there. There's someone." The ground trembled fiercely, snapping his attention back to the altar. A deep rumbling vibrated through the earth below them, rattling his bones. "What is happening?" Clara's voice was frantic, glancing around for answers that wouldn't come. The entire forest seemed to awaken. The darkness pulsed alive with energy, surrounding them, locking them in a tightening grip. What did they disturb? Lawrence didn't know, but the fear clawed at him, leaving a clutching tightness in his throat. "What if it needs?" he started, but the creature lunged back toward them, its growls sending shards of terror through the hollow. In that moment, Lawrence understood the chilling truth. They were part of something much darker, and now, there was no escaping it. "Hold on," he yelled as the beast lunged. Again, and the night exploded. In that chaos, who could tell what fate awaited them? As the ground beneath them bucked, every shadow looming larger, every heartbeat quickening. What choice would they make when faced with the insatiable hunger of the forest? And what if the truth of the ancient runes was far darker than they could ever imagine? The howl of the creature ripped through the trees, a deafening wave that made Lawrence's blood freeze. Time fractured. For a heartbeat, He felt the world's still silence hanging thick, shattered only by the unending growl outside the hollow. "Back! Everyone back!" he shouted, barely aware of his own voice, the panic seeping into it. He pushed Clara and Evelyn deeper into the shadows of the cave, where the darkness could, for just a moment, feel like safety. Eli closely followed, his face pale under the flickering light. The earth trembled again, as if the ground itself feared the creature lurking just beyond their fragile barrier. The altar pulsed, glowing faintly in the moonlight, its runes glimmering ominously. Whatever was connected to those symbols had awakened something ancient, and Lawrence could feel its essence creeping deeper, wrapping around their hearts like a slow, cold fog. "What do we do?" Clara asked, her voice breaking. Her earlier resolve was lost to sheer terror. "We can't stay here. We can't let it in. Then we find another way out," Eli proposed, scanning the walls of the hollow, desperate for a means of escape. "There's got to be something." Before he could finish, a bone-chilling screech split the air. The creature had made its way to the mouth of the cave, silhouetted against the backdrop of a moonlit night, its eyes glowing with an insatiable hunger. Lawrence felt a primal wave of dread wash over him. "Don't look at it," he yelled, tearing his focus away from its gaze, which seemed capable of hypnotizing any who fell under its spell. "It's a trick." But as he said those words, they felt hollow. How could he protect them when he was wrestling with his own fear? His heart was bruising against his ribs, refusing to let the fight escape. "Lawrence, we need to distract it." By some time, Evelyn said, suddenly composed, her eyes blazing with determination. The spark of bravery amidst their encroaching darkness ignited something within him. "Okay," he nodded, now grasping her desperate plan. "But what? We can't just run out there." Clara gulped, looking from Lawrence to the altar, then back to the growling monster. "Maybe we can use that thing." Her voice rose in urgency. "The runes. Maybe they're meant to protect us somehow. What do you want to do? Touch them?" Eli shot back, eyes wide with disbelief. "Maybe it's our only chance." Lawrence took a step towards the altar, his instincts battling with his rational mind. What if that was the key? What if it turned out to be a trap? But they had little choice left. As he approached, shadows coalesced in the corners of the cave, pulling closer, whispering secrets he couldn't decipher. The creature snarled, sensing their movement, its breathing growing heavy, deep and threatening. "Quickly," he urged, reaching for the altar as Clara and Evelyn moved beside him, trying to make sense of the strange markings etched into the stone. Eli glanced back toward the entrance. "Just a few more seconds. It's getting restless." "Don't look," Lawrence warned, focusing on the archaic symbols, running his fingers over the smooth stone. Could they harness this power? Could it help them fight back? "We need to activate them somehow," Clara exclaimed, her voice quivering with urgency. What if before she could finish, a shattering roar filled the air, and the entrance buckled, an explosion of sound and dust as the creature lunged. The force rattled the hollow, and Lawrence felt the floor give slightly beneath him. "No, everyone hold on," he shouted, gripping the altar tightly, and then, as if the very fabric of night had woven its darkest threads into reality, the ground erupted around them. The runes pulsed angrily, swirling with energy that sent a rush of wind through the hollow. Something ancient awoke, angry and fierce. "Lawrence!" Evelyn screamed, panic intertwining with awe. What would they unleash? What lay beneath the surface they thought they understood? Just then, a blinding light exploded from the altar, illuminating the dark with an intensity that threatened to swallow them whole. "Get down!" Clara shouted, and they dove to the floor just as the light reached its peak, disorienting and consuming. And then, silenced an unnatural calm. What had they released? As Lawrence raised his head, everything felt different. Shadows danced, but something else loomed in the air, a promise of power, yet a warning of chaos. As if something had come directly from their darkest fears, one question charged through their minds. Had they stepped into salvation or sealed their doom? The light faded gradually, leaving only a strange shimmer in the air, a lingering trace of the power they had unleashed. Lawrence blinked, trying to clear his vision. Anxiety coiled around his stomach like a vice. But the silence didn't last long. It was shattered again, an echo from the cave's mouth, a snarl mingling with a cry of anguish. The monster was still out there, more furious than before, sensing its prey just inside the shadows. "What did we do?" Clara whispered, her voice quavering as she pushed herself up. Eli's jaw tightened. "We tapped into something we didn't understand." His fingers trembled at his sides. He was terrified, and so were they all. "Look," Evelyn called from the altar, her voice cutting through their fear like a knife. Pushing away the dust, she pointed. The runes had started to pulse again, engulfed in a bluish light that spread over the wall behind them. The symbols glowed as if in response to their fear, sending ripples through the cave. "What does it mean?" Lawrence focused on the patterns, heart racing with possibility and dread. "I don't know," Evelyn exclaimed, her expression shifting between awe and terror. "But it's like they're alive." Suddenly, the screech from outside became more desperate, as though the creature was growing impatient. The ground trembled again, not from its feet, but from the energy radiating from the altar. A crack appeared on the opposite wall, jagged and pulsing with that same eerie glow. "We have to find a way to control this," Lawrence insisted, a wild idea flaring in his mind. "If we could channel its power, maybe we could keep it at bay?" "That sounds risky," Clara said, casting nervous glances at the altar. "Yeah, risky is our middle name right now." Eli rolled up his sleeves. "We don't have a choice anymore." As if embracing the absurdity of their situation, they huddled close, drawing strength from one another. The room felt charged, a thick tension hanging in the air as they stood shoulder to shoulder. What if Clara hesitated, breathing deeply as though bracing herself? "What if we each touch a corner of the altar? Maybe it can amplify whatever it is we have awakened." "Sounds crazy enough to work," Eli scoffed, but his voice wavered. Lawrence nodded. "Together, on 3. 1, 2, 3. They placed their hands on the stone, warmth coursing through them like a jolt of electricity. The pulsing roar from the creature outside became a snarling crescendo, rattling their bodies as if breaking through the walls between life and death. The runes flared brighter, painful intensity burning through their fingertips, flesh against stone. Fear surged in Lawrence's chest. He squeezed his eyes shut, willing himself to focus. "We have to visualize it. Picture it." "Picture what?" Evelyn screamed, her voice strangled under the pressure. "Control," Lawrence shouted back. "Control, protection, blocking it." The altar thrummed with energy, and a wave of heat washed over them, squeezing their lungs. At that moment, a deafening roar erupted from outside, much closer now, as if the beast had taken a step forward, and then everything shattered. Dark figures twisted and leapt from the shadows, materializing from the ones anchoring the altar. Whispers filled the space, too many voices overlapping, each one a reflection of their own fears. "No," Clara cried, trying to pull away, but the grip on her hand held firm, tethered to the altar, drawing her deeper into the chaos. Everything spun, a whirlwind of darkness and light, of screams and echoes. Lawrence's heart raced as he struggled against the pull. Then the wall exploded, sending fragments flying as the creature blasted through, fury incarnate, an awful, gaping maw that screamed silent terror. Shadows fell away, scattering as reality twisted. "Hold on," Lawrence shouted, though their unity felt frayed, the sinews of their resolve drawn thin. That he sensed a choice dwelling in the heart of chaos, a chance to confront it or be swallowed whole. As recognizably real as breathing. Was this their salvation, or the heart of their doom? The final roar of the creature enveloped them just as a blinding flash engulfed the cave once more. And just like that they were lost. What had they birthed from the dark? And could they possibly fight what they had awakened? The world exploded with sound and light. Lawrence felt himself yanked through the portal of chaos, the essence of the forest swirling around him, twisting and turning with a life of its own. For a heartbeat, he lost sight of his friends. Then, just as suddenly, he found himself tumbling into a clearing, landing on hard, cold ground. The air around him was crackling with resentment, anger pulsing in waves. He looked up, heart racing, scanning the area. Where were Evelyn, Clara, and Eli? Panic clawed at him, but he couldn't focus on that now. Ahead, glowing runes flared like angry spirits, casting surreal shadows off gnarled trees. The altar stood proud and defiant against the dark, whispering promises of ancient power. But now, with the creature watching from the edges, Lawrence felt only dread, Suddenly, low growls erupted from behind the altar. Shadows flowed together, drawing a grotesque shape that twisted and writhed, a dark mirror of the beast they feared. This was the manifestation of their nightmare. "Lawrence!" Evelyn's voice broke through the noise, rushing toward him with Clara and Eli close behind. Relief flooded him, but it was fleeting. The very ground trembled, as if the world itself was anticipating an ultimate clash. "You all okay?" he breathed, glancing around frantically. "Barely," Clara murmured, looking just as shaken. "What is that thing?" "I have no idea," Lawrence admitted, steeling himself as the creature became clear. It was more terrifying than they could have imagined. Maelstrom of shadow swirled around it, amplifying its size. The beams of moonlight that snuck through the treetops illuminated its jagged mouth, dripping with malice. "We have to activate the runes again," Evelyn shouted, a hint of determination piercing through their shared fear. "It's the only way to protect us." "From what?" Eli yelled, panic carving into his voice as the beast lumbered closer, eyes burning with a hunger that made Lawrence's skin crawl. "From that," Evelyn pointed as the grotesque figure stalked forward. The air crackled again, filled with nightmarish whispers promising both power and destruction. But now, something began to break, a flicker of resolve igniting in Lawrence. Together, he rallied, gripping Clara's hand tightly. "We need to visualize control. Channel this together." The group filed into a formation around the altar, hazy energy swirling between them, stretching taut. With each heartbeat, they visualized it protection against the creature's unholy desire. The runes responded, pulsing brighter until the light nearly blinded them. "Focus! We can do this!" Lawrence shouted, each word a lifeline snapping taut, binding them together. With each pulse, they felt the darkness retreat momentarily, but the beast pressed on, audacious now, emboldened by their uncertain strength. A roar thundered through the night, a visceral promise of annihilation, sending chills racing down their spines. "Please," Clara cried out, her voice piercing through the mounting noise. "We need to unleash the protection." They surged forward, palms pressing against the altar, hearts meshed into a harmony of urgency, trying to channel everything fear, hope, desperation, and courage into that ancient power spiraling beneath their fingertips. The flash erupted again, illuminating the clearing with a deafening light, and that's when it happened. The creature lunged, teeth bared, thrusting forward as the bright energy engulfed them all. Time stopped. Light and shadow collided in a storm and awakening. With a roar, the creature was knocked back, shrieking in pure madness, the force of their unity slicing through the chaos like a sword through fog. In that moment, something shifted as the brightness faded, the oppressive shadow unraveled, retreating into the tree line, snarl echoing into the abyss. The forest finally sighed, pulling back as if letting go of a breath held for far too long. Lawrence blinked, eyes adjusting. They were alive. The altar glowed softly now, and at its center, a path opened, pulsing like a heartbeat. "What just happened?" Eli panted, voice shaky but with a glimmer of hope. "I don't know, but we need to get out of here. Now," Lawrence urged. Evelyn stepped forward. "The paths have opened. We can finally leave this cursed place." With urgency propelling them, they fled down the path as the dark whispers faded, unwilling to linger in the terror that had consumed them. Driven by adrenaline, they ran, the forest lightening, opening up like a sanctuary under the early dawn as they emerged onto the edge of Eldridge Woods, breathless and alive. The sun kissed the morning sky with golden hues. Shadows danced in the underbrush, but now they held no menace. "I can't believe we made it," Clara breathed, squeezing her friend's hands, tears of relief sparkling in her eyes. "You did exactly what you needed to do," came a soft voice from behind a nearby tree. It was an old woman, a timeless guardian of the woods. "You faced the darkness and emerged wiser. Just remember, the forest always remembers. Cherish the light you found." Lawrence turned back towards the trees, sensing a bond formed despite everything. The woods were less a nightmare now, and more a part of their newfound strength. As they walked away, laughter began to fill the air, light and free like promises of a happier future. Together, they moved forward, leaving behind the darkness, united under the glow of a new dawn. but what remained still whispered of ancient fears, urging caution while guiding them into countless tomorrows. The woods had reclaimed their secrets, but the friends held tight to their bond of flicker against the shadows, reminding them of both the terror and the triumph. This was their farewell. You need to subscribe now to make sure you don't miss any of our incredible stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and let the world know. Flood the comments section with your thoughts, and tell us what you think about the ending. Your reactions matter. And don't wait even one more second to share this with at least 5 friends who need to hear this epic conclusion. Your support means everything.